So thanks for joining me, and we've just had a great session about road user charging and congestion charging, low emission zones we touched on. Can you just summarise for us the subjects we covered and what some of the conclusions we came to?
Well, I would say that the key subject we discussed was the fact that the whole world is looking at congestion charging, at air quality, low emission zones, and the lessons that we're getting from one place to another are being implemented or being examined around the world. And for example, the United States is beginning to embrace congestion charging on the heels of New York City going forward. There's been a long hiatus between London and even after Stockholm and Malmo implementing. In Europe, we now see a resurgence of interest around the world. We see that the people on the panel represented interest from Europe, from the United States, and Southeast Asia.
Yeah, and this is important for cities and mobility in general going forward. What's the big picture here?
Well, I think the big picture, as I see it, is that I learned today that cities that in isolation implement some sort of cordon pricing or congestion charging, there's a growing awareness that what you do in one place can have impacts around the periphery. And one of the things that came out that I learned from today is that there needs to be a wider acceptance and understanding of the regional impacts of, say, a cordon or a central business district restriction and access control. And we also learned that many cities in Europe are implementing controlled access, but there's a need for having some way of knowing what it takes to be able to access or where you need to park to avoid people getting fines.
Yeah, it's important, and hopefully we need to make better and more efficient use of our roadways, and also to try and maintain funding.
I really like the comment that was made by Tilling Chan from San Francisco, is that in some places like London, one of the things that was guaranteed in London is that they would increase the number of buses and increase the transportation, public transportation offering as being concomitant to implementing congestion charging. So if you're getting people out of the cars, you're giving them an alternative modes of transportation by increasing the amount of seats on buses and on trains. Whereas in some places there's no way to do that. San Francisco is already maxed out. So if they implement congestion charging in San Francisco and they get people out of the cars, how are they going to get them into the city center? I don't think that was answered, but it is something that we are recognizing, that you need to have an alternative, or you need to provide alternatives. And then today we're seeing this resurgence of individual mobility with scooters and bicycles that are impacting, and the fact that I didn't realize today that some of the cities that were spoken about, you can reduce the urban space allocated to vehicles and not have a negative impact on traffic conditions. That was a surprise to me.
Yeah, some interesting points coming out, and we come together at these events. They're valuable events for the whole industry, and you're pleased to be here, and it's been a good week so far.
I think that the ITS World Conference in Singapore is something I've always dreamed of going to, in terms of going to Singapore, because I've heard of their electronic road pricing for decades. I've always dreamed of coming here, like I just said, because I wanted to learn more about how they're doing it. Obviously, when you're a small nation state and you can be very prescriptive, for example, Singapore is transforming to where every vehicle will have a GNSS or GPS device in it. I don't know if that would work in U.S. cities or European cities, where every single car would be obliged to be equipped with what some people like to call a tracking device.
Yeah. Maybe not, but we can all have this conversation, and it's a valuable time to do this.
Yeah, I enjoyed the session, I think mostly because there was a really great active participation from the audience. We had a number of really pertinent questions, and I think that we had a good panel.
Brilliant. Thanks very much.
You're welcome.
Thank you.